Hello everyone, how y'all doing? So very recently there have been a few updates on Stop Killing Games. I mean, Roscott went to the EU Parliament, which was really cool, and apparently there's also a proposed California bill. I haven't looked into this bill for too much, and honestly one of the main reasons for why I haven't done so is because I'm really glad that there is a push in the US side of things to try to push for more consumer protection. The only thing is that I'm not like completely optimistic when it comes to the US. And I'm gonna bring up this statement that was proposed by Entertainment Software Association, in which they're trying to lobby against this. I have to assume, like, I think they're very similar to the whole Video Games Europe Association, where they basically have the sides of the publishers and now they're trying to lobby against this proposal. Like, I think we all kind of knew that this would happen. But the only thing is, I think the statement that Video Games Europe provided was extremely flawed, and I also think that this is also very flawed. The only thing is, there's one part here where they actually talk about the law, and the image might be a little bit blurry because I downloaded this image from Twitter, so obviously it's going to be heavily compressed. I don't know the source of the actual document that they shared here, so if anyone knows the source, please let me know. But anyway, there's this part here, which is where it says AB 1921 is fundamentally flawed. This bill is based on a false premise that consumers own digital games with permanent access. This is not how software works. Games are licensed, not sold as unrestricted property, which yes, but like that's always been the case. Like with copyrighted media, you've always been sold licenses to consume them, but like in the past, we didn't have an issue where if a publisher decided they no longer wanted to support a certain piece of product, that would also affect the thing that you bought. So that's the issue. Is like, yes, we don't own like my copy of, I don't know, Death Stranding. Like, I don't own Death Stranding, obviously. I don't own Kojima's works, but I do own the disc. I did buy that disc. Like, it's not like Kojima or anyone involved can just barge into my apartment and decide, oh yeah, that disc is mine, because like, we only sold you a license, but we can revoke whenever we want. It's like, that's not how the law works, my guy. They can't just do that. Now, are there certain situations where my goods can be confiscated? Yes, but that only really happens if we're specifically referring to like legal issues, like if I committed a crime and as a result, like as part of like the punishment, they ended up confiscating, or if it's part of like an investigation. But that is completely different from the publisher just randomly deciding that, yeah, we don't want you to own this anymore because we're no longer supporting it. That's completely different. And so yeah, I don't really like this whole argument of like, oh, you're not buying, you don't own the game, you only bought a license. Like, yeah, no shit, of course we only bought a license, we know that. The only thing is, when it comes to EU, I can very easily dismantle this argument, but I will say though that when it comes to the US, I'm not entirely sure. Like, for example, here they said California already recognized digital games as a license when they passed AB 2426. Now I know what they're referring to. So this is something that was published like years ago, where a lot of people were like, "Oh yes, California based, they're finally tackling the whole live service shenanigans of digital license or whatever." And it's like, when I read that, like, I even made a video. All right, I have the page here with me. Thankfully, I linked it on my video. So there was this whole bill that, the intention was to offer more transparency and, try to attack cases where there can be false or misleading advertisements on certain games. And a lot of people thought that this would like combat the issue that we've been experiencing, but it really doesn't. Like, because a lot of people, when this bill was proposed, they thought, hey, this means that publishers can no longer just, well, publishers, but this can also refer to like storefronts. Like, they can no longer use the terminologies like buy or purchase. Like, they have to specifically specify that, hey, you're only buying a license. Like, that's what people assumed would fix, but in reality, it doesn't really do that. Like, it really doesn't change anything, because if you zoom in here, it says here, the seller provides to the consumer before executing each transaction a clear and conspicuous statement that does both of the following. States in plain language that buying or purchasing the digital goods is a license. And then there's also this part here where it says includes a hyperlink, QR code, or similar method to access the terms and conditions that provide full details on the license. Here's the thing though, this already happens. Like, this is already the standard. This California bill changed nothing because this is quite literally something that they already do. Every single time you buy something from the PlayStation Store, they always link the terms and conditions. And so this bill really didn't change anything. And if they're saying here that, that you can continue to say that, like, they're basically saying that you can still use the terms buy and purchase as long as you clarify that it's only a license. And so this really changes nothing. And it didn't change anything. Like, this, and the fact that, Entertainment Software Association is referring to this bill as like a justification for why our push for consumer rights should be denied, it goes to show to you that the California bill, if anything, probably did more damage to us than it did good, because it essentially solidified the idea that, like, yeah, when you buy something, you're not actually buying it, you're only getting a license to it. Which, again, I don't really care if you refer to it as a license or not, because at least when it comes to the EU, using this terminology such as licenses or whatnot really doesn't matter. And the reason for why it doesn't matter is because a lot of these video game publishers are probably already violating EU law, because we already actually have protections against a lot of this stuff. So, for example, here it says, like, this is Article 17 of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. Right to property. Everyone has the right to own, use, dispose of, and bequeath his or her lawfully acquired possessions. No one may be deprived of his or her possessions except in the public interest and in the cases and under the conditions provided for by law, subject to fair compensation being paid in good time for their losses. The use of property may be regulated by law insofar as is necessary for the general interest. And then there's also this right here. This is a press release. This was in reference to a court hearing between UsedSoft versus Oracle International Corp. And this was mostly in reference to, like, a debate as far as, like, whether or not you have the right to sell used licenses, which, from what I remember, it seems like you technically do have the right to do that, but obviously, in the current landscape that we have of, like, digital goods, it's kind of hard to implement a system where you can sell used digital goods, and so it's a bit complicated. But I don't really want to talk about whether or not you can resell licenses or not. I'm actually more so referring to this statement right here. By its judgment delivered today, the court explained that the principle of exhaustion of the distribution right applies not only where the copyright holder markets copies of his software on a material medium, CD-ROM or DVD, but also where he distributes them by means of download from his website, where the copyright holder makes available to his customer a copy, tangible or intangible, and at the same time concludes in return form, payment, or fee a license agreement granting the customer the right to use that copy for an unlimited period. That right holder sells the copy to the consumer and thus exhausts his exclusive distribution right. See, this is very important, because something that I think is very important for people to realize is that in the EU, there's no distinction between physical and digital media. Like, you buying something from the digital store and whether or not it has any type of, like, dependencies with the internet does not actually deprive you of a lot of the property rights that you have when you buy something. Like, sure, it's like that example I was giving earlier. Like, if I buy a disc of Death Stranding, yes, technically speaking, I don't own Death Stranding, but I do own the disc that comes with a license for me to play that game. That is something that, is mine. Like, I can claim ownership of that. And that does give me some extra property rights. Like, for example, the right to keep it, the right to resell it if I choose to. And so, and it also comes grants with certain protections, like the one I was mentioning earlier about, where the hell's the page? The part where it says everyone has the right to own, use, dispose, and bequeath his or her lawfully acquired possessions, and they should not be deprived. And so these are rights that are granted to me. Now, of course, I know it does say here intellectual property shall be protected. So obviously, when it comes to intellectual property, that's a little bit different. And it's like I was saying earlier, it's like me buying Death Stranding doesn't mean that I actually own the IP of Death Stranding. But as far as, like, the license, like the disc, that is something that is granted to me. And there's a lot of like laws in the EU that, also try to target like unfair terms, which I would argue that a lot of terms and conditions are unfair. And so we do actually have a lot of protection. And that's why I feel very confident in saying that, like, yeah, I think we are getting robbed. I think that there is a very good argument to make for why a lot of these publishers are already probably committing a crime. But when it comes to the California thing, like, I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I genuinely don't know, because like US law is confusing to me. I don't really understand it, but I don't know. Maybe there might be a point to be made here for why maybe consumers really just don't have the rights to anything, but I don't know. Like, if some of y'all are experts on American law and they could clarify this as far as like whether or not you think they have a point, let me know. I'm actually not sure, but at least when it comes to EU law, this statement here would be meaningless. Now, I like this part, like, ignores how games actually work. Video games are dynamic software systems, not static products. Many games rely on online servers and authentication, security and anti-cheat tools, and ongoing updates and infrastructure. When services shut down, functionality can end. Yes, and they do. This is standard across modern software. Standard doesn't mean it's okay. No software product is required to remain available to consumers indefinitely. Now, I agree that no software product is required to remain available for purchase indefinitely. If the publisher no longer wants to sell something, no longer wants to make it available, that's fine. That is their right. If they no longer see any benefit in keeping something up, they should be allowed to shut it down. That I completely agree. But I think that that's a little bit different as far as like consumers that have already bought the thing and they still have to be connected to servers. That's the main issue. And there's a part here that says like, oh, AB 1921 mandates impossible legal and technical obligations. Games include licensed content, music, athletes, brands with fixed terms rights, not perpetual rights. AB 1921 would force publishers to renegotiate for perpetual rights, often impossible, or alter, remove content in ways that break the game or violates contracts. So this is a very weird, point because, I have a copy of FIFA 15 and that thing still works. I'm not joking. I put the disc on the console. It literally told me, sorry, but online servers are shut down. Thank you for your time. I actually didn't even play that game online, not even a single time. But like, I was still able to play the game. And so this whole argument is like so weird. Like, it's really funny because if these people, if they're really concerned about how it would be like it's so impossible to implement a way to like allow players to run private servers or run, their own servers through like server binaries, like, and it doesn't really matter which method. Like, they claim that it's such an impossible task, which is not, by the way. Like, and there's literally proof that shows that a lot of the stuff is not impossible. But like, they claim that this is such a technical, infeasible thing to do. But it's like, okay, but like, you can also just make the game playable offline. Like, you can also do that. Like, what is it again? Like, is it, Naruto to Boruto Shinobi Striker? Heavily live service game. You can still play that game offline. Now, there's not a lot that you can do offline, but it's playable. It's like, you're telling me that, like, even in scenarios where for some reason it's so impossible to make ways to, like, allow players to run private servers, which is not true, by the way, but, like, even if it was this, like, super crazy impossible thing to do, it's like, can you not just consider just making the game like even somewhat playable offline? It's like, these games are already running locally on your computer anyway. Like, there's so much of the functionality that happens on the client side. Like, not everything happens like server sided, and so the game already has some functionality being done locally on your computer. And so you're really telling me that there's no way you can just tweak the game to just have some independency toward the internet? You're telling me that that's impossible? Because I'm sorry, if you're telling me that that's impossible, I just don't believe you. Now, if you want to say that it's impossible with current games, sure. If you want to make the argument that the games that currently already exist, if you try to like patch an offline mode or try to allow game players to run private servers, if you're telling me that it's impossible to renegotiate the licenses with the middleware software, I can agree with you. I can actually agree with you on that. But you're telling me that with games that are going to come out later, because a lot of these bills will probably not be retroactive, but you're telling me that like with games coming out in the future, it would still be impossible? I'm sorry. I just don't believe you. I think you're lying. At that point, I genuinely just think you're lying. And yeah, in general, that's all I really want to share. There's not really a lot that I want to add regarding this because again, I'm not like the most optimistic person when it comes to American consumer law, but I'm still in favor of them and I'm still going to support them. And yeah, that's all I really want to share.